Meeting to order. Bailey, can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Lorge. Here. Commissioner Husnick.
Here.
Commissioner Huntash.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Finneman.
Here.
And Commissioner Archer.
Here.
And President Winnick.
Here. I ask everybody to rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move we approve the agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And now I'll look for an approval of the minutes from September 10th.
So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
Second? Well, whoever, yes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain?
Abstain.
All right. And Chris, are you going to take us into the grant application?
Yeah, I'll tee it up, but I think it's kind of a group effort between Chris, myself, and Ryan. Let me just get 1 second, get my computer hooked up here. President, members of the EDA, I think if you recall from last meeting, we kind of had a conversation about the potential land purchase for the property located adjacent to the airport. And where we kind of ended up was with the direction given to staff to kind of pursue what a potential CDA grant application would look like for the particular parcel. Kind of taking a look at what we could, information we could glean from that. And on the screens in front of you is the actual parcel in question. So I had a meeting with Ryan, and we kind of went over what are some of the options from a, engineering perspective, what kind of questions could we get answered through a potential grant application. So he did bring forward a couple of options. They are listed out in the packet, and I guess kind of the goal tonight would be to really kind of dive in to see what exactly, is this in line with what the EDA is looking for? Is there anything else that we're missing? Kind of get a feel for what the potential layout would be, so we can kind of get some guided discussion in terms of when we go back and make the grant application, that we're making sure that we're bringing back the information that the EDA is requesting for this particular parcel. As Ryan kind of laid out in his potential scope of work, his scope of work includes the preparation of 2 conceptual layouts for the parcel. Again, as well as the preparation of 1 final 2-dimensional layout of public street and utilities. And again, kind of depending upon how the lots, are envisioned for this parcel, that's going to kind of guide how that utility infrastructure is going to be designed. Also, that also includes the preparation of cost estimates, so we can kind of get some ideas as to what these improvements would cost. If there's any easements needed for utility connections, we can take a look at what the easements would also be. And the layouts, as Ryan indicates here, will most likely consist of cul-de-sac and dead-end streets with some stubs to allow for some future connections as additional parcels develop in the area. And maybe Ryan could speak a little bit more to this, but he reached out to MnDOT and kind of got just their initial, kind of or some initial information from MnDOT as to be what would be required for this particular parcel if it does, develop or redevelop. So Ryan, is that okay if you just want to give us a quick summary of what your conversations with MnDOT?
So MnDOT ideally would want any access off of 97 to line up with another intersection, which would be Fondit in this case, to the west.
Oh, right there.
So right there, so we'd come through that right away there and circle back to the property and serve it from that direction. Without a review, they certainly would require a right turn lane to be constructed into the development upon what use is being proposed, potentially a left turn lane on 97 too, but that's kind of what I know at this point, so.
And I think we also just had, because kind of the original conversations that we had regarding that parcel were lot sizes, like what size lots could we potentially get out of that if it were subdivided down. And don't get married too much to these figures. These again are kind of just some preliminary figures in terms of just some of the different options that are on the table. Here, focusing, kind of in these quadrants here, you're looking at approximately acquiring a 7 acre, a 6 acre, an additional 7 acre. Based on this layout, there's another one here. This one kind of expands out the land uses up here. So here you get a 10 acre, an 8.5 acre, and then a 5 acre one here. We also could expand out, down to this additional adjacent 6 down here, that triangle piece that's down there. So that 8 acre could, theoretically become a 14 acre. These don't take into account any of the, the stormwater management aspects of it. These are just kind of just numbers on a map to kind of see, how this parcel could be split apart. Here again, if you went to 2 lots, you'd have a 12 acre on the south side, plus an additional 10 acre here on the north side. Again, roads are not part of this as well. And then kind of here is a 7 acre and a 14 acre, which if you were to add again that corner segment down there, you can add an additional 6. Again, very rough layouts, very high level conversation, but kind of shows that you're looking at possibly, best case scenario, 3 lots of varying sizes out of this one, or you could do 2 larger ones. One of the conversation points was first brought up was, the city is, in terms of, city-owned parcels, they really don't have anything for that 10-plus acre size. We're seeing some requests for it, that 10-plus acre lot size for businesses to locate on. And again, that being said, we also don't have any projects that are in the wings right now. I don't have anything that's basically saying, you give me a 20-acre site, I can be in there tomorrow. These would, the development of these would still be driven by market demand. So it would just basically put it up where if somebody comes in looking for a 20-acre site, we'd have a city-owned parcel that we could place in front of them. Again, just in reference back to the last meeting, Greater MSP has said they're seeing more requests for shovel-ready land or city-owned land in terms of, development. But again, that typically comes with the caveat of the developers wanting to make a deal on the land purchase. They kind of want to get it for reduced, not basically paying market rate. They're looking for some sort of, deal to come in, if it's a city-owned parcel. But Greater MSP is seeing more requests for city-owned land now than they have been in the past. So just kind of wanted to make that known to the EDA. So I guess at this point, we're just kind of looking for feedback on, potential layouts, because some of these prices are going to be depending upon, what layout option we kind of look at. And then again, kind of going back to that bulleted list that's part of the EDA packet to make sure that this kind of hitting on what the EDA is looking for on here, something else that we missed. And based on all this feedback, we'll compile up a grant application and get that over to Washington County for review.
Thank you, Dan. I got a question for Ryan. With the stormwater treatment, would that have to be on each individual lot, or would we potentially be able to do something included with what we have at the airport already, or even possibly on that triangle parcel that's kind of tucked in behind and open up?
Yeah,
more?
your limits of the area to study could be determined by you guys. We wouldn't want to just look at something here and there and there. We'd do, like a regional type of system here. You got kind of a high point in this property, so you might have a regional pond on the west side and the northeast, kind of where the water flows. So to maximize any development area. Now, if we want to look at outside this parcel itself to provide some of those, that's a decision you guys just got to guide. But that triangle, it's going to be hard to kind of get water to that direction because the water flows north along the east property line of this parcel, and then before it goes under culverts under 97, and then on the west side, you see the little low area. So where the arrow's there, that low area drains through drain tile to the northwest right there. So that's kind of low on that side. So that would drain northwest, and about where the triangle or the end of the property is on the property with the house within there, southeast corner there.
Put it on here.
So from here, and if you connected to the southeast corner of this parcel, that's kind of like the high point ridge through there, where drainage goes west and east. So you would have 2 separate sides to treat water.
Would we be able to, I guess I'm just looking at, I know Rice Creek wants more regional treatment than.
Yep, that's what we would do. We'd put it on the side. So let's just say Platt came in to develop, then they wouldn't have to take up their buildable area that we would, after configuring in the road and utilities. That way then they would come in, just develop like we've just did with the outlots here. They didn't have to build a separate pond. And that would already be accounted for in an assumed impervious area that they would be developed on their own property.
So if they have 10 acres, they're not gonna have to commit 1 or 2?
We would size all that stuff accordingly.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
And basically just provide them a pipe to connect to part of their project, right?
Sure. Open it up to any other questions for?
I usually jump right in, so why not? When we first began this idea of marrying together with the county to do some studies to value and understand our properties better, and before this particular isolated piece of property was pushed, the idea was really formed off of Forest Road, Herrick, and an arrival to the interior industrial property and a result out on 97. The periphery, the perimeter is the important part. I don't understand why we would study this isolated piece when we really should be studying, if we're gonna do this as a marriage, we should be studying Herrick, the corner, this McCullough land, the 2 houses and what happens, and then the airport property or the city property that's further west, or even the triangle that's down there. It should be looked at as a whole, so there's a context to this whole thing. Right now, we're looking at something that, when you look at that plan set in with a single approach and a single exit, and I'll keep preaching the dilemma of 97, you're just not looking at the scale of the context that you should be looking at. So if there's gonna be a study the whole damn thing so we understand it, and don't isolate on this one little piece that really is just locked until it finds its way, a better way to 97 and a way to Forest Road. And Forest Road, a better way to connect to 97. All of that could be judged and looked at, and that would really tell you what kind of value you have here. Because some of the more expensive and valuable property isn't necessarily this piece. There's 2 landowners sitting in there that are gonna be, I don't know, squeezed in one way or another, the small plots, and with a long roadway going between them that's not anticipating doing things beyond the 2, 3, 4 site plans that you've delivered. I think it's very small thinking, and it's a bad way to study this property, and all it's doing is pushing this one piece of property.
Well, this is a piece of property that was presented to us, and that's where we're at. I have to disagree with you. I think it's a great piece of property. It's got a lot of potential. My understanding is the Herrick property is off the market now. They have something going on there. So development is happening here, and we should get in on that development and get this going.
Well,
There's
then
a lot of interest in
let's
that.
dig back to, something's been presented to you that hasn't been presented to me yet. There's a proposal on the table, an offer. There's something sitting there. I don't have any background on what the deal is, because when I thought about this and city buying land and being a land speculator long-term on something like this, I thought, okay, what's the deal? Is there some critical thing we can do? Is there something that has to be done now? Is there something, 5 cents on the dollar, like I said last time, on a land purchase? I know nothing about whether we should even go ahead and do a study, because I know nothing about this deal. So if you'll explain the things that you know about this deal, maybe you'll catch fire here somehow.
We have to have a closed session for that.
Well, that should happen before we commit to an evaluation.
I think just for a point of clarification, in terms of total pricing, I mean, I think the focus solely on land pricing, you miss, you can get something for 5 cents on the dollar, but like I said at the last meeting, if development costs to put infrastructure in there are, $4 a square foot, you've priced yourself completely out of the market, and that should be, land price is a very key component in a development, but I think it's not the only price that's there. There's also.
I understand, and I'm not making that even a big component. What I'm making a big component is that you're not looking at the context, and that's foolish. You're not going to study this whole parcel and know how the whole thing grows, then you're not knowing all the forces that impact on you. You're taking one isolated little piece and saying, I can live just off of 97. Oh, look what's going to come my way on the marketplace. In 2023, they're going to probably put an overlay on 97 and fix up some existing entries. Okay, maybe you want to ride that wave a little bit. But for the most part, any reconfiguration, remodeling of 97 is way out there, not on the books. So look at that hill. I've lived off of Fond and Fenway for 28 years. I know exactly what that feels like, what the grades do. And I looked at it from the point of view of a land buyer saying, man, let's say there's a commercial marketplace right here, right now. And I say, that's a lousy piece. I should start looking at
Actually,
something else.
97 is on the books, too.
What, when?
Oh, Ryan, can you speak to that? For making that a 4-lane?
Mark does know the date. I guess what MnDOT has in their CIP is, MnDOT has a mill and overlay planned on 97 in 2023, and they're currently reviewing particular intersections that they didn't commit to me, tell me at this time, of doing turn lane or intersection improvements. So I don't know exactly which ones. That's 23, and as far as long-term plans, there's just no funding in place at this time. Obviously, if the city were to lead something, that would generate potentially some grant funding or something like that, but that's what I know now. I know they got several planned improvements east of 61 on 97, but not major improvements in this area.
If I'm going to tag along on this one, it has to be the whole area study, and that has to validate a price tag based on that area study. And then I will believe that we've done something for the city to have evaluated that, and now we know much more about this entire area of property that really works as one. It's not an isolated piece right in the middle, for heaven's sakes. You know, that's not necessarily how something grows ever.
Well, the airport's on the west side, that's a
This
solid
property
one.
right here.
Yep. Airport.
Yes, but it's out of the flight pattern. It's developable. It's part of the story.
No, it's inside of the airport boundary. You'd have to talk to MnDOT Aeronautics about that.
But that whole flight pattern that was sitting there didn't reach beyond having a segment of this property.
I know that, but it's still inside the fence is what I'm trying to tell you, Mark. It's a very definite airport piece of property. It's inside the fence.
And when I studied that flyover down at the other end where the landscaping firm was, there were a limit to it. You could do certain things up to that limit.
That's
And I swear-
outside.
You're confusing that with the RPZ, the Runway Protected Zone. That's this imaginary thing, but this is inside of a boundary, a set boundary that MnDOT has helped acquire.
Can't ever be developed.
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is it's inside the airport boundary. You'd have to talk to MnDOT Aeronautics about that. But it's inside the fence.
They exclude that. I'll adapt and we'll go to the east and say, why aren't we talking about all of that? Herrick's property been on and off. If it's off the market, I don't think it's the whole damn thing. Can somebody tell us about anything about the Herrick property? We hear so little in this group.
The Herrick property, there has been the request at the time was not to bring, the project is very early on. There has been just some movement in terms of some projects that potentially could come forward on the Herrick property. So I think including at this point, if it was, this spring, they had their agent was willing, again, we went and met with Herrick to say, are you willing to entertain a potential study on your property? Because again, you don't want to force a study on the property owner if they have no interest in being in part of it. At the time there was, since that conversation was had, and now there has been some internal, the owners changed, their kind of direction for the property, so to speak, and have a couple of ideas that they're trying to see if they can't get ground or get legs behind or get some momentum behind. If that's the case, that's going to guide the Herrick property. So I think at this point to include that in a regional conversation, if they already kind of have their own kind of idea of how they want that property to develop, I think it's basically see if, given this new set of information on the Herrick properties, kind of see if that materializes versus trying to force kind of a regional area onto that one.
An absolute on the Herrick property, I would imagine, I'd be surprised if I'm wrong, is an umbilical cord to these internal pieces that takes a loop and travels back to 97. If you're going to develop it otherwise, I think that's a really poor maximization of a piece of property. So I can't imagine not understanding how we're going to get through Herrick's property to Forest Road, or some thought about Forest Road in the future, in impacting the value of this land. Plus, it's just
That
the
piece
market
of,
price just ain't-
yeah, the other option there too, I'm just looking at everything here, that piece of property that's north of the interstate removal, that's completely separate parcel, and that's owned by a bank or something, is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, I believe.
I believe that's under contract right now, too.
Oh, it is, huh? Okay.
This whole area is getting ready to
Yeah.
develop.
But I mean, that would be a potential spot for a road, that's all I'm saying.
Well, and I'm sure between Herrick and Interstate, there would be an easement for a road. I mean, I think that would be a normal part of a development agreement with the city anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and if utilities come in from here, we would still need to figure out,
You'd have to have an easement.
that utility easements would need to come in. I think that would be also incorporated as part of this, kind of overall evaluation of this particular parcel in terms of what are the development costs to get this more closer to shovel-ready. So if a developer comes in or a project comes forward, we can at least have more to base a decision on whether or not to proceed this on than basically just a land price with the big unknown of, what does it cost? What's MnDOT gonna, what are the improvements in 97 and what are those gonna cost to get people in to know? Because that could be, not conducive to, or basically price land so high that you can't sell it in the market. But that's a component. What's it getting utilities into? That's a component. What's the potential for stormwater? That's a component. Because the stormwater comes in and takes up a large chunk of it, so now your 7-acre sites are down to 3-acre sites. Now we're not gonna have full details in the projects and but at least it'll start to help to guide the conversation saying, if the city decides to pursue this land purchase, we need to get X amount of acres or X amount of sites, X amount of cost, and we can start doing some of those cost projections so we can at least say what the payback on that investment is. So we have some numbers behind it versus, it wouldn't be advisable just to purchase the land and not have that extra, basically, that costing done. I think we have an opportunity here to do some of that costing in partnership with the county to at least get some answers for this particular area of the city.
In the last meeting, there was this bright future painted about what it could potentially be. There's going to be this, it could be professional, it could be retail. We're on 97, for heaven's sakes. Go down the path of taking this singular site and feeding it the way you're going to feed it off of a road that's going to be like it is for a very long time, and you're not going to have this bright, bigger, better horizon down the road. So don't paint that story. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, probably very secondary industrial kinds of properties, and don't go glorify this, it's going to be much more than that. So that's what we're going after.
Industrial properties pay quite a bit of taxes, and they also employ quite a few people.
That's what we're going after. So before, you were one painting the big story, for heaven's sakes. The big story's not there. It's a different story.
It is a big story. It's got a lot of potential to it.
I say study the whole area. You know where I stand.
So not really having an opinion either way on studying part or all, but what's the downfall of not just studying the whole piece? Is it additional costs? Chris, can you explain kind of some of the costs in that would be on us versus the county?
Are you talking just that piece or the whole
The
area?
whole, I guess both cases, both scenarios.
President Winnick and members, good evening. The Washington County CDA actually has the ability to go up to $40,000, so if you wanted to study more and the cost was more than $10,000, we can certainly do that. The grant, the way it works is we've got 2 pools. The smaller pool is we'll put in $1 for every 20 cents that the city puts into it, and that can go up to $10,000. If it's over $10,000, we'll want a 1-to-1 match, but we can go to $40,000. So there's ability and flexibility to go to a larger study area if you choose to, but that's something you'd have to decide. But there is flexibility, and we do have resources available to help you no matter which size grant you're looking to apply for.
And there's such optimism that sits here saying, oh, look, we've got these 3 sites, 4 sites, whatever it is. Why do we become the interceding piece here? Just that hope that, the prospect that we're going to turn it around and sell it for less, the idea that we'll draw in a development. You're talking like there's developments knocking on the door right now. Well, maybe the marketplace says, that's all we need. We need a landholder to hang on for a while and see what comes of it down the road. The city's going to take it, and as you're proposing, we're going to entice development to come because we're going to sell it for less money. We're going to do a lot of stuff to get this marketable and shovel-ready. So we're taking on the onus of being a long-term speculator on land. That's not the best piece in town to think about this. For heaven's sakes, we can name 5 or 6 others that would be catalysts to things happening, that would really grow something, that could be in marketplace today. I can cite some for you. It could be in the marketplace today. There's investments. Okay, let's go the Public Works, old Public Works land going south past, name I can't come up with at the moment, down to MnDOT, 97 and 61. Dynamic piece of property. City already owns a piece of it. City could own all of it. Better yet, the city could partner up. City doesn't have to dive into full ownership. It could partner up with that, and maybe even the private development would take it over at a certain point. But if the city talked all its way down there and it's a major
A
landowner
long-term
already,
lease right now.
it's how long? 2 years?
I think 5 or 7.
No, it's longer than that. I'd have to go back to the lease.
Leases can be bought out. There's a better outcome here. This is a site, that's such a small, come on, that's a small lease. That's a site that's in the marketplace with power tomorrow. And that could be just a great site to invest in. Go downtown, for heaven's sakes. Invest in a building and partner up with an adjacent building. Those owners are sitting there waiting for something to come along and kick them in the butt. And the prices are coming down where that's an affordable thing to look at too. And then what have you done? You've really pushed something that everybody puts lip service against, but we never do. Well, that's a way to do it.
We did invest in downtown. I think we got a brand-new building there, and it's about $20 million.
Yes.
The city invested in.
It's a start. If you want to build on that, you got to do the rest of downtown. Go across the street by Town Square and put in start to make a long-term negotiation with 2 landowners that sit there that impose on a parking ramp, and suddenly you're going to do something that's going to really affect the future of downtown. There's just so many other places to put money other than a holding position here.
I think this is the best one in town, and it's on the market now. It may not be in 6 months, it may not be in 3 months.
You and I don't see eye to eye very often.
Well, I have a question. If we apply for the grant, and how long does it take? That's done at your level, correct?
So for the small pool, yes, we approve it in-house, just myself and Barbara Dacey, my executive director. For the larger pool, for grants of over 10,000, it goes to the CDA board for approval, and that's once a month. So 1 week for the smaller grants.
And then once that's approved, we would go in, do the study, and we wouldn't make any decision moving forward if we buy it or not. So I'm kind of seeing this as just an easy way just to kind of get a footprint of what's going on, and then that could open up negotiations or talks with other adjacent properties.
Well,
So I'm thinking this is just a starter, like a platform for us to have those larger conversations.
I think so too. That's the way I look at it.
So,
too.
I mean, not to go against what you're saying, but I'm thinking this is just a conversation starter. This is just a sounding board for us to start talking to people. And if we do that study, we can move on to the next and apply for another grant, and then all those things could come together to something bigger.
well, and I guess, just to clarify something, because if we go with the small grant, which basically we're talking max is $2,000 for the city.
The city money, right?
Right. And now we decide to, okay, let's take it to the next level. Can we convert that over, or we just start
Yes.
from the beginning again?
No,
So-
well, for the same study area, I would say that we'd probably, if you go over 10,000, we'd want you to match it 1-to-1,
So we could just-
whatever the increase is.
We decided it had potential and wanted to
Yeah,
do some more, we could do that then.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
And I should clarify too, if you were looking at 2 separate studies, you can certainly apply for up to $40,000 per year, but those are 20 cents to every dollar. And you can do up to 4 of them if you'd like.
So we do 4 individual sites for only $8,000 investment,
Would
and
be
really
cheaper
start
to do
having
it
some
that way.
talks on what we'd like to do.
Yeah.
At least with the study, you get some of the answers you're looking for, that's the thing, a lot of it's just hearsay, that's exactly what it is, it's, and guessing, at least with a professional study, it has some insight into what's going on there, and I think it'd be worth the money to do it, just to find out, just to answer the questions.
I know Brian has all
After the study, we might say, you know what, forget it, or it might be the other way, so.
Dan, do you want a motion on this then, or?
Yeah, and I think just from a point of clarification too, I think on these, as long as there's with the study, don't look at it as like this is the only one. And I think that's kind of there, but I think we're gonna learn from, kind of that original scope of work that, we may not need these 3 things in there that didn't really add a lot of value, so we can kind of refine the next one to really kind of distill down exactly, from what the EDA is looking for in these grant applications. At this point, just in conversations with Ryan, we've kind of gone back and forth in terms of like trying to get, what do we do for a starting point? Everybody's kind of learning this process as we go. And I think at least getting one out in, moving towards some level of completion, we can kind of look back and say, we liked A, B, and C. We didn't like D very much. It didn't add a lot of value. So next time we go for a grant application, let's have a better defined, what we're looking for, and better defined map versus kind of going from a whole cloth perspective type thing. So that's the only advice I would say is kind of take a look at this one as kind of like the first, use it as a learning opportunity to kind of fine tune the next applications that come forward. Because I think, Washington County is a fantastic partner and kind of help guide these conversations, these processes, because this information at some point will be, you know, whether the city uses it as a decision to purchase the land, or if a developer comes in and takes a look at what's, you know, potentially there, these will answer questions that staff has asked quite frequently, you know, at least gives us a number behind it. So even if the city basically says, you know what, you know, the cost of doing this for 3 lots is just too cost prohibitive at this point, if a developer comes in and says, what about this parcel, we can say, we have this study that we funded. If you can figure out, you know, this meets your spec, this is kind of what we looked at. And they may have a creative solution that does make those numbers work, but at least we're starting them on the conversation to potentially, you know, break this parcel free on either the public or the private side.
All right, thanks, Dan.
So in other words, it would help your job too. I mean, that's exactly what it amounts to, is it would clarify things for everybody.
In essence, a lot of times when developers come in, you know, they're always asking us, kind of the first question we have is like, you know, we have a lot of land available for us. It's the first question we always get back. It's like, you guys have a ton of land here. And we're like, yeah, and then they start to look back and they're saying, what's the utility cost? Their first question is, what's the next level? If they're gonna purchase, I mean, they're more concerned typically with the utility, the infrastructure costs, what it's gonna cost to kind of get that parcel moving. And then they kind of go back, taking that information, then they go back and negotiate with the landowner for the purchase price, because that's one piece of a much larger puzzle. And I think when we kind of come in, you know, if we can have any information to say, here's a potential couple of sketches that at least gets their conversation started, at least maybe gets that developer making a couple additional calls here, you know, so we can kind of keep working with them, versus a couple of times, you know, like these larger companies will call in, and unless you have something basically that you can hand over to them, they'll call you, 5 minutes later, they're on to the next location for it, because for them, it's about how quickly they can get the deal closed on some developers. Some other ones are a little more willing to work with you, but having information on terms of how this parcel could potentially develop, and just some rougher net costs that aren't just basically, we're just guessing at this point, these actually have some study behind them, does help to position the city better, give staff more information with developers. So I mean, I think it does make, you know, selling property in Forest Lake or enticing development here from the staff perspective, it does make it more effective, and it's easier for staff to kind of keep those conversations going with developers when they come in.
Chris, talking this specific parcel, and given its proximity to, say, the interstate, I mean, is it within, say, that desirable zone for industrial business type developers to look at?
President Winnick and members, yeah, I think it is. You know, when we're talking about manufacturing companies, for example, it's not that the visibility is that important, it's easy access that they're looking for. So this is certainly easy access to the freeway. And if it was a manufacturing company, it's not necessarily, unless the owner sometimes has an ego, which does happen, really important to have that visibility. They just want to know that there's easy shipping or access for employees, that type of thing. So I don't think from a visibility perspective this is a bad location at all. In fact, you know, with the surrounding properties and the potential future of connecting to Forest Road, this, you know, might make a very nice industrial park some point in time during the future. So for like a you know, light manufacturing or an e-commerce or something to that effect type business, and that visibility is not important.
What about the data center you were talking about before? Would that be a good spot for it, or?
So it all depends. You know, data centers can pretty much go just about anywhere as long as the zoning allows it. You'll see data centers in downtown Minneapolis or in downtown Duluth. What they're really looking for is privacy mostly, and security. They don't want anybody to know they're there. They just want to be left alone, and they'll make the building look like, you know, a barn or a, you know, and there's data centers in Minnetonka that look like mansions. So they'll make it look like it fits into the neighborhood, whatever that neighborhood is. So it could potentially be, but from what I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing more inquiries right now for manufacturing companies that are looking, or e-commerce companies that are looking for 10 to 12 acres. This to me is an ideal location for that, and hopefully eventually how we'll work with the surrounding property owners to see if that couldn't maybe be expanded to include a larger area at some point in time. You got to start somewhere.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Account for the remaining 2 pieces of property, someone in your ongoing discussion.
The 2 remaining properties.
The small ones, chopped up by a road, future kind of dictated to them. Can't build left, can't build south of, they're narrow, and you're gonna be the entry road to something bigger and stronger behind you. What do you do with those pieces? Incorporate them, think about their cost as part of the story?
Are you talking about right in here?
Yes.
Well, we haven't had a discussion with them because we haven't done anything with the other property yet.
So we disregard it?
My understanding is, they're happy where they're at, but, you know, they know development's coming. I mean, they live next to the airport right now. I don't think, you know, noise or, you know, and something coming in there is going to affect them a lot. I mean, they're aware there's an easement for road coming through.
I think they get devalued.
I don't see how, if anything, they get valued higher. They're gonna be on the corner of a street on Highway
You know how
97.
big that little one is?
It's gotta be, what, 2.5 to 5 acre, 2.5 acres? There's gotta be a minimum building size.
Is there a way on this map, Ryan, to pull up acre sizes?
Yeah, right click on it. What's here?
Always ask the expert, he knows the software better than I do.
To 1 acre.
Yep, 1 acre.
Yeah, imagine all the potential.
The bigger one is 5.
So I have a question. The conversations we're having on this larger piece here, is there any timing that we're up against as far as when they want an answer? Or can we discuss that?
I don't know. Have you heard anything, Dan?
No, I mean, as far as I know, there's no hard end on anything. I mean, it's just, I mean, and, you know, again, the advice would be is to get full known cost, walking in eyes wide open on this, where, you know, I mean, it's pretty easy, I think, at some points to get married up to the fact that you're getting a deal on land potentially. But like I said, those other development costs, you know, if it ever goes and develops, I mean, are very real costs or hard costs that you have to pay. But I don't see this deal hinged upon, you know, we have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I mean, I think we can do the analysis that's required to make sure that the investment is worthwhile for the city if we decide to pursue it.
Yeah, if we don't do the analysis, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice both ways, both directions. Because apparently it's an opportunity, but still we need to know what the actual cost is gonna be. That's all there is to it.
So do these two parties know that this is being talked about? And that they're talking about putting a road right in between the properties? Because as I see it, that totally is
Well, the
going to.
road easement's been there.
I understand that, but do they know that there's, I mean, have they been talked to? Because to me, that really does negate any value, especially this small one. What are they gonna ever do with that? And so have they, I mean, I think that it would behoove us to talk to them and just say, okay, this is a grand plan. What are you thinking now?
Yeah, that's what we're talking to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't personally reached out to him, but I believe Donovan in the past has had just some kind of casual conversations, just kind of longer range, but nothing specific. Because again, we don't have really any, like, you know, at this point, between now and an actual shovel in the ground, working on something, there's a lot of steps to kind of go through, you know, that conversation. And I mean, again, there's a lot of points in this thing where the pricing that comes back could easily price this thing, you know, out of the market, just in terms of a fair development. So, but I agree. I mean, at some point, I think if we start getting,
My gosh, we owe it to them.
no, absolutely.
Is it possible, if it came back too high to buy or to sell to a developer, is it possible for the city to purchase a first right of refusal for the future?
Would be up to the property owner for sure.
I mean, is that something the city would consider? It would it would put you in first place down the line if we didn't go forward with it after studying it.
Yeah, I don't know how that works in the
I have to take a
statute.
look. I don't know how the
don't know if the city
statutorily
can
that's
do it.
allowed or not. I can take a look into that.
out in private enterprise.
Well, you could, I just don't, it'd be hard for the seller to agree to that, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if, but I don't know if.
But it's a darn good idea. For sure.
All right, any further discussion or look for a motion here? Either go ahead with the grant application or not, I guess would be that's basically the only motion you need for this?
Can I ask?
So, President Winnick, if I may, you may want to have two components to that. Maybe the first one would be an application to the CDA for up to a dollar amount, and then the second part of that might be to enter into an agreement with Ryan to do the feasibility study, if I could just suggest that.
All right, great. Judy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, what exactly will this study entail? I mean, we talked about infrastructure, what else?
It's on the,
Basically, that scope of work.
it's on page 4 of your
I
packet.
should know that, huh?
Yep, the scope of work outlines what's included in there, so it's
So is that what?
2 concept layouts, final 2-dimensional layout of public streets and utilities, easement or cost estimates for the project, identifying utility easements.
Okay, the
and-
stuff that you went through before, all right. Okay, thank you.
And again, I don't think it's, I mean, it's not something that's fully inclusive of every cost you'd see as a development, but it gets you, in line or gives you a better idea of what some of those costs are gonna be.
President Winnick, if I could just add one more thing. Just occurred to me that as part of the application, we do ask for a resolution of support, and there's a specific format that we're looking for. And I don't know logistically if the EDA would approve that resolution or if it will go to the council.
EDA would approve the
Okay, okay.
resolution.
And I don't have that format with me tonight, Dan, but I can certainly get it to you, so.
So we just make a motion to approve the resolution of support and then authorizing Ryan to go ahead with feasibility study. So 2 actions.
I just don't know if you have the resolution in your packets, do you?
No,
Do you have
there's
it?
no,
Okay,
there's,
so you-
there's an application in there, but there's no actual, and I wasn't aware there was a resolution.
Okay,
required
my
for it.
apologies.
I had
But
the
we can-
application, but I didn't have
I can
the.
email you that, and if you'd like to, begin the work, we'll move pretty quickly. At the next EDA, you want to pass a resolution, we'll move at your pace, so.
Sure. All right, any further discussion, or I'll look for a motion? Go ahead,
No,
Judy.
go ahead. You worded better.
I don't know if I can or not.
So,
So I would like to make a motion that we do the grant application up to $10,000.
on which property? On that property and the other 2 parcels that Finn was talking about? So we get the whole scope?
No, I think we should just do the one. Currently, because we can always add on additionally later.
And that being based on the fact that if it's additional than $10,000, which it would cost more to do than your dollar to dollar instead of 20 cents rate, it's a better, it's a better situation for the
Yeah.
city to do the smaller piece and then
Right.
do another additional smaller piece.
Another 10,000.
I'll second that
All right.
motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
And abstain. All right, so that motion carried. And then we're looking to authorize Bolton and Mink to do the feasibility study, or just a motion for that? All right. Look for anybody to jump out and make that
Well,
motion.
I'll make a motion that we authorize Bolton Make to move with the, go ahead with feasibility study.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion?
is there any possibility that they could be informed better about the Herrick or the other property north of, whatever that industrial development is right there? So, because I see 2 different developments happening relative to arteries to that centerpiece. Can they be informed at all about the prospects or the present state of mind about anything there that would give them a lead to know how they're going to come through and join from Forest Road in.
I think Ryan's fairly well informed on what's, being the city engineer, he sees all those as they're coming through.
'Cause it's like there's a couple different cost propositions that come out of that connection that we're putting off till some later date.
Are you asking about the sewer?
No, I'm talking about traffic. I can picture the reordering of Forest Road to get to 97 a way that removes some of the consequences, and it starts to chew up that little northern piece. I can picture a road coming off of that and try and go west to go into this internal property, and that enters at a very edge proposition. The road that goes through then will be different than being at the south of that existing industrial building on Herrick's property. Can he have the freedom to explore those kind of impacts?
I think that would all be part of the feasibility study anyway, yeah.
I would think so.
All right. Any further discussion? Sam, I just propose a friendly add-on to your motion of, to the maximum of $10,000.
I'll agree to that motion, sir.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Just to continue the flavor.
All right, so we'll move on to a new tracks update. Dan?
President, members of the EDA, just kind of wanted to just do a quick check, and I know the new tracks senior bus transit service is kind of new this year. We did make a request out to kind of give them an update on what the ridership is on a weekly basis. I know the feedback I hear from residents at the senior center, they're all extremely happy with this level of service that New Tracks is providing. But just kind of wanted to do a dive, or just a top level dive into what the actual ridership numbers are for that particular program here in the city. So you do see in your packet, starting on page 8, is just kind of the weekly breakdown of ridership numbers from April 18th when it started through August 8th is what this report covers. When we averaged it out, I just ran through and just did a quick weekly average. We're looking at approximately 12 riders a week are utilizing the service. The low on there was actually 6 riders, and the high is 21 riders. They also are tracking, as part of that, the number of donations that they do receive from those who do utilize the service. On an average, they're seeing approximately $17.50 come in weekly on the riders. The high week, I believe, was $33, and the low week was $3. There is no official charge that riders have to pay. It's all donation based. So if you recall, when New Tracks came in, they were trying to use the donations that came in to kind of help offset some of the costs. So I just kind of wanted to give an update. I know the EDA had made a request at some point to kind of see how this program was, if it was effective, what the numbers were. So that's just kind of the numbers from April through, like I said, through August 8th. And we'll continue to get numbers back from New Tracks as this kind of keeps going through this, going through the rest of the year from now on. But just kind of wanted to get those numbers in front of you, see if there's any questions, anything else you wanted us to bring back to New Tracks. But just providing the numbers to the EDA at this point.
Go ahead.
I do have a quick question. On the first chart on page 8, the $5,363, is that just for those dates on that page? Or
And I believe that's total. I believe, so this is actually,
through August 8th, or is that just through?
that's through August 8th. So I believe this is an Excel correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an Excel workbook that came in that my assumption is that total, that 5,363 is their cell total that as they go through and add in, as they fill out the numbers from like August 15th, that number will reflect what the current charges are. So that would be the current charge would be that 5,363.
So, Dan, I know that, the seniors are really happy at the senior center with this, but have you gotten feedback from New Tracks themselves? I mean, is the ridership what they expected it to be, or what are they saying?
I have not actually gotten any feedback directly from New Tracks on this one. My only feedback has been with, Sharon at the senior center and a couple other, senior facilities. And, again, that feedback's been positive. I have not spoken directly with anybody at New Tracks beyond just getting the reports back.
Okay.
Bailey may have had a conversation with them.
I've been working with Scott Olson from New Tracks, the guy that came here to present, and he said everything's good. They, just reading some of my emails from him, rider counts were up and down, but they added a couple stops per seniors' requests, and then I think they went back up. So they're happy with the service, happy to provide it.
Okay.
Just for your information, Mayor, or, yeah, Mayor, President, or whatever. There's a new program at the Y called Forever Well for 50+, and they're promoting the new tracks there, and it's being very well received. Nobody knew about it. And we also have Wellness 50+ starting up in Forest Lake, and we are utilizing this schedule to get it out to the public. So hopefully,
That's great to
we'll
hear.
see more activity.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that?
No, I'm just glad it seems like it's getting to be a success, and I think it was a good idea, and it worked out, so.
Well, I think it's a very affordable, I mean,
Yep.
I don't think public transportation ever turns a profit, but we're not investing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars into this. Hopefully in a few years, there will be even a better alternative with the technology that's coming around, but
One thing I would like to see is us getting to some of the small businesses a little bit more in the future, because I think a lot of the big box companies are getting hit, and the economic impact is not really going back to our city, where we could be going to some smaller companies too, so.
The driver will drop off at different places that they request and pick them up at the same place that are not on the route.
I
They
didn't know
asked.
that. Okay,
Yeah. He's been very accommodating, and they love him.
Good.
great to hear.
Oh, that helps. You bet.
All right, well, thank you, Dan. All right, we're to others. Chris?
President Winnick and members, nothing current since the last meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just going back to property, and I don't know how informed on specific numbers for different cities, but have you been seeing industrial property that, city-owned going for, reasonable or fair market rates, or were, in recent developments anyway?
Yeah, President Winnick and members, I think so. Of course, the market determines what the property is worth and what it sells for, but there is a considerable amount of activity in the county. I wouldn't suggest that there's a lot of publicly owned property. Most of the property in the county is privately owned, but there are a few cities, Cottage Grove comes to mind, and Newport comes to mind, where there is some publicly owned property. And there's movement on that property right now, so there's activity in the manufacturing field particularly, so.
Now, have you seen any, kind of a hybrid, like a public participation on a privately owned property? I don't know, it seems like maybe that isn't gonna work, too many fingers in the pot, but I mean, is there that third choice on something?
Yeah, there's a possibility of a partnership, and the EDA by state statute does have the ability to enter into a limited liability partnership with a private property owner. Most of the time, though, it's generally speaking, it's one party or the other that really is in the deal, so to speak. So it's usually the public side or the private side. But there are possibilities, and maybe there is ways to structure the land so that you might take it down in different phases or something like that to avoid maybe some capital gains for the property owner. So there's all kinds of things that you could certainly look into and explore as part of this as we do move forward and look at different areas.
All right, thank you. All right. If we don't have any other business, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a question regarding our program where we're able to do some assistance on facelifts in the fronts of buildings and that? Does anyone know, does the new Dandy Auto, well, not the new, but the facelift there, was that ever brought to our attention about maybe potential of that? Seems like it turned out real nice. It seemed like an ideal scenario for.
They reached out, I believe, we gave them the information, and we never got an actual application. I know that there was a request, I did forward information on to I believe when they came in for their building permit, we did kind of forward the information on, and they ended up, I think, not pursuing the application, so.
So is that the process, if someone comes in like that and it looks like it makes that criteria, we for sure make them aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, building department knows that there's something's kind of going on in that area, or if they're, kind of on the commercial side, they're, we do, they remember to, but I do specifically remember that one came forward and there was information that was forwarded on, to Danny's at that point. But I'd never received an application back for the grant money.
My question would be if somebody comes in and asks about it, and is there any follow-up on our end that we would ask them?
My question.
Like, why wouldn't you do this?
I think sometimes, and now granted, I think I'm speaking in pretty general terms. It may be that their project value doesn't hit the threshold for reimbursement, expenses that they may be doing like a smaller project that, once they kind of see what the parameters are, they're like, oh, I'm not gonna, or they don't want to put that extra money in to get that abatement money back. So, we don't actively take back, or do a lot of hard selling, following up on that. Staff has not done that, but I think from my experience, it's probably when they look at the threshold, they're seeing all the thresholds here. My project is only a third of that. I'm not going to take on, 2/3 more costs just to get $5,000 back.
I'm just wondering if that's something that we should look at and see if we need to tailor it to the needs versus just totally denying people or not giving them an opportunity, if we need to tailor that a little bit to help other smaller businesses start doing that.
I think when it was first, when we first kind of worked through the whole plan, we were trying to avoid, compensating people for normal maintenance, routine, wear and tear on buildings, things like that. This was, right, so that's kind of where we put that up, but, I'd be open to, the EDA discussing that again. I don't think we need to get to a point where, routine maintenance or changing a couple windows is gonna qualify for a grant or anything.
There was some inherent flexibility in there, wasn't it? We have allocated to 1, 2, or 3 X number of dollars per year. We could potentially package a little bit more for a project that seemed to be worthwhile. Is that flexibility there?
And I think in the past we have. I mean, I think if you look back at some of the approved projects, they've kind of come in either, the project was completed, we kind of retroactively, we're flexible, allow that to happen. There's a couple other ones that I think we were proactively working with the applicants to make sure that we try to get their project to fit the parameters there. And again, I think a lot of it is just simply when you look at, the standards that are there, there is, kind of a threshold that you need to hit in terms of to qualify. I think if you're just doing a singular siding project or a window project, you're just not gonna hit that threshold unless you do more of a bigger renovation project.
Well, and we expanded the area that qualifies for it too, so we kind of opened up more of Highway 61 into that.
Has anybody
development zone.
applied and been granted this year?
Not this year. We've not had any.
So that property where the Keller Williams is on the corner there, the old Keller Williams and the Pie Pizza, would that not qualify, or is that?
That's maintenance.
That was, yeah, they didn't apply. I mean, yeah, and that would be a maintenance project as well.
We haven't expanded up Broadway with that at all either, have we?
No, it's been pretty much down I think it's the M1, M2 down 61. Pretty extensive all the way down 61. We have not gone out Broadway on that one. But that's something we could also explore.
Might be something worth talking about anyway. All right. I guess we could put that on the next EGA
I'll
agenda.
put it on there
anyway.
for the next agenda.
Could I make a comment? Just want to thank Blake Roberts for his comment on the last EDA about the status of the weeds along the highway and in the ditch. Next day, they were out there working away. Thank you, Blake.
That's some work to do, though.
Yeah, that was very good. Seems like, when you drive by something every day, you just kind of get accustomed to it. All right, if there's no further business, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.